Ahora sí.
Ahora sí?
Ahora sí.
Okay.
Oh.
All right. We just had a little audio problem. Is it working?
Yes.
Can you tell?
It's working if I go here.
Right.
And I can see the meters are moving.
All right. So we just had a little snafu.
Yeah.
You know, part of the reason why this
I'm
happens to us...
sorry.
What?
I'm sorry.
Oh, you're sorry. Oh, I was like, part of the reason we do this is because we refuse to, like, do this in some cool little studio where we'd just rather throw ourselves outside in the wind and figure out what happens.
And talking about the wind,
okay,
you were telling something very interesting about the wind.
Okay, so they didn't hear anything?
No, nothing.
Well, that's gone forever. That's like the other letter of Corinthians that we don't know where it went. It's a windy day in Austin, Texas, where we call them Sahara winds. It's an actual meteorological phenomenon, and there's dust caught in the atmosphere that comes down on our part of Texas during this time, and it comes from Africa. But Caesar's asking me, does my hat ever blow off in the wind? Which is a really insulting question. He doesn't understand the mechanics of hat.
Insulting? Yeah, is that the category of
you're not
my
very
saying?
Vaquero. No, you're good. Hats don't blow off unless they don't fit your head, right? Like, has the wind ever blown off or a huarache off your foot? I don't think so. Anyway, in our community now, hats are catching on, and so you got to break out your expensive hats once in a while because everybody has Stetson Open Roads these days. In fact, at an 04 Center show last night, in a band I love here from Austin called Indian and the Jones, 3 of those players are part of our regular church team, Jesse and Billy and Sarah, but 3 of the 4 band members were all wearing Stetson Open Roads. So I had to break out my expensive one today, which fits my head, so don't be concerned. The wind will not take it. It just won't take it. It's going to take more than Sahara winds to take this off my head.
This is just to explain that we are about to make a fundraise to buy a hat for me.
Caesar needs something to cover that nonsense up. Yeah, you got to cover
expensive hat.
Right. Anyway, so here we are. Since this is the second take, I guess this is leftovers of leftovers.
Leftovers of leftovers is which is still good.
What are the leftovers that taste better? Not only the second time, but like the third time.
Tamales.
Albóndigas, meatballs, tamales, potato soup. The way I make potato soup.
The way you make,
Anyway, we're stalling
because your skills in the kitchen.
I believe what Julia Child said. Everything's better with butter. So I make potato soup by boiling potatoes for several weeks in butter, almost not quite. Anyway, now I'm hungry.
Sunday.
Yeah, Sunday leftovers. Yeah. Okay, so Sunday leftovers. As preachers, sometimes you go into a Sunday morning confident of what you've got. Sometimes you go in lacking in confidence. And I remember sitting there during the worship song before the first service thinking, I hope this song goes for about 3 days long because I don't think I'm ready. It was Holy Trinity Sunday, which is an odd day of the church calendar where we celebrate dogmas instead of events in the life of Jesus. So already I'm not super excited about that.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I mean, what we're celebrating is essentially an idea, and that's fine, but I'm less enthusiastic, and here's why. Because ideas evolve and change and morph over time. So on Holy Trinity Sunday, the lectionary gives us this random text from John 16, which is one of the few places in the New Testament where Jesus was speaking to his disciples, and into the conversation he brings awareness, or he names the Father and he names the Spirit.
Right.
So we don't have anywhere to drop our anchor in the text around Trinitarian theology that comes to us as a formulation from several centuries after Jesus lived and died. Which, you never know as a preacher how much to pull on people's ideas. There's always a give and take between pulling an idea out of someone's hand, and do you do more damage or does it do some good? My sensation of our community is mostly people are ready for the hard questions. But I was unsure of that going in. I thought, am I just going to upset people? Or are we going to make a connection? But here's where it came together for me, and it came from a sermon that you sent me to watch that really coalesced around it. I can't remember the name.
Yeah, me neither.
Reverend something. Anyway, here's the idea.
Reverend Trinity,
whatever. Here's the idea. Theology is really linguistic models. Theology is not the same as reality. These are models we work with to help us understand. For example, atoms aren't little blue spheres circling and red spheres circling around little clear spheres like we learned in middle school, early atomic theory. That's not what atoms actually are, but that's a huge leap forward to help us understand something. So I think, however unintentionally we keep preaching our way through the lectionary and dropping these interesting stepping stones in the river we're trying to cross as progressive post-evangelicals, I look back at the one we talked about on Sunday. This might be one of the most helpful ones of all, and it came from nowhere for me. Like it totally surprised me. But here's what it is: we are consistently compelled to ask hard questions so that we may build new models of understanding of who God is and who we are. We are not obligated to freeze our understanding of God in some ancient model conceived by men who had no idea where the sun went down at night. That's the phrase that I bought from someone I heard that resonated with me. How are we going to let ancient men who looked at people of a darker melanin level in their skin as property, looked at women as property? How are we going to look at these ancient men who found rational reasons to justify genocide with scripture? How are we going to look at them who they literally couldn't make up their mind? Is a chariot pulling the sun through the sky? Like, where does it go at night? Kind of. We're going to let them come up with the ultimate and final model of how we understand the Godhead. Does that feel a little bit weird? Because it does to me, right?
It does.
So as we look back, and we borrowed this permission from Peter, and we just talked about, the Apostle Peter. We just talked about this recently. He wasn't the sharpest, but he was willing to quickly pivot and reach back and say, okay, now how do we make sense of this based on what we thought that meant, but what can it mean now? Here's the value of understanding theology as a model. There was a great contribution given to us by understanding God as Trinitarian. And so let me read the final words with which I closed my sermon, heavily inspired by John Shelby Spong. If you really want to take a deep dive into heresy, find Bishop Spong stuff on YouTube. These words, and I meant these words, that's why they're bolded and highlighted and underlined. And so maybe we can use this as a way of asking a question. Here was my conclusion. Trinitarian doctrine must not be the last thing we say about God. It can't be. It's a good enough place to start. It worked in the 4th century. It's a good place to begin. But we can move onward from there, and we must. We can go deeper and wider still, right? We can build new models, and this is an invitation to all thinking people. We can build new models that accommodate for new levels of awareness around who we are, what the cosmos is, and who God is. We can build new models. Trinitarian theology doesn't have to do it all. But here's what it must do, okay? No matter how we technically articulate our understanding of a three-part nature of God, if it helps us account for humanity in the nature of God and divinity in the nature of humanity, then I'd say we're on the right track.
Amen.
Yeah, well, how come nobody is pushing back on us? Because that's
Amen.
Pants on fire heresy compared to what I was taught in seminary. But I believe it. And then this tiny invitation, and I mean this, and this will be the stepping stone that we will come back to multiple times, especially as we move out into the summer. Here's the stepping stone. If this thought frightens you, if watching a preacher tinker with the Trinity and the limits, the fringes of what that gives us and what that takes away, if that thought frightens you, take your time with it. There's no rush, no need to rush. New models are always under development. And I remember when I ended the 9:30, I thought people might go, oh, and everybody just kind of looked at everybody, and I was like, oh, that was a terrible ending. That was a terrible ending. But here's what I mean by that.
They were waiting for the drums.
And the musicians didn't even believe me when I said conclusion. They thought, well, that's his first of 10 conclusions. But here's what that means to me. We are invited to never stop pursuing new models around which to understand new levels, to accommodate new levels of awareness around who God is. We must not accept a faith that is static and brittle, because brittle things don't bend, they crack and they fall apart. We must not accept the 3rd and 4th century thinkers to define for us the outer boundaries of how we speak about God. Our friend Rob Bell said it this way years ago, and he poked the bear and some people farewelled him and whatever. He says, nobody gets to paint the last portrait of Elvis. It was called the Velvet Elvis, right? Elvis. No one gets to say, okay, I fully encapsulated the man on this canvas, no one else gets to touch it. No one gets to do that, friends. There is no freedom in that. What there is in that is you memorize tenets of faith, and you go out into the world and you try to compress everyone into your new tribe. You guys, I'm beginning to see I'm just going to say this. I'm beginning to see a way to be a post-Christian believer in Jesus. I mean, for the longest time, I feel proud to say I'm post-evangelical because of all the craziness that brings and all the weirdness and all those claims about God that we're not supposed to question in America. I'm post-evangelical.
Period.
Period. Proud of it. I'm beginning to see there's a way to be a post-Christian follower of Jesus. That doesn't mean I will walk away from my faith because these models still work for me as long as they are models. The moment they become the levers that I pull in order to excommunicate you or him or her or them, then they're no longer models.
Well, I think that's the reality
That
right
is the
now.
reality.
That is the reality. I mean, I'm happy to consider all of this as a model. I'm happy to consider all of our theology as a work in progress.
That's right.
But to be honest, that's not the reality that a lot of even our folks are facing. They understand things, and seminaries understand things in a very monolithic way. I mean, this is the way, and these are all the verses to prove it.
Yeah, if someone, well, it depends on the seminaries you go to.
Right, but you know, even though in the more liberal seminaries,
liberal and progressive,
they have some boundaries to do that because they need to evaluate things.
Yeah.
And they need to measure things.
Yeah.
So that's why I consider so liberating in some way of saying.
Yeah.
When you say, if you're still struggling with Trinity and this new idea of models.
Yeah.
Take your time. We are not in a rush to do this because I think people need to understand that there's work to do.
That's right.
And it will take a while.
So if you're sitting in a crowd of people and someone says, here's the way the world works because the Bible says so, you have to understand that is someone elevating a model and telling you that it is absolute. And I know we've experienced mostly that kind of teaching, right? But if you go to a seminary like my little seminary, we were a progressive intra-tradition seminary where I had professors who ranged everywhere from Roman Catholic to Anglican to Lutheran to everything in between. And if you go to a place that stretches you, I think here's what you end up with. To be having this conversation is the point. It's not to land anywhere. And this is what makes everybody crazy about us. I get it. This doesn't have to work for you.
Yeah, right.
If that model works for you, as long as you don't find resident in your model sufficient reason to cast me into hell, then work with your model. No one's casting you into hell.
Yeah.
Biblical literalism just happens to be probably the lowest take on what we have before us. It's the easiest thing to do. There's something far more complicated and terrifying. And here's I was watching more John Shelby Spong this morning, as I do, and I heard him say something interesting. He says, preachers get in trouble in the pulpits when they say what we've known to be true in the academies for decades. There's a gap between the academy and the pews of our churches.
That's right.
That's right. And somehow we're criminal for saying what we...
Yeah, but to be honest...
Are you going to be the devil's advocate now?
No. No.
I'm going to drink a little Sahara in my coffee.
Take your sip.
Yeah.
But I think people like you, and people like me, we're trying to close that gap. And that's what you are trying to do every Sunday morning.
Yeah.
And in every Sunday leftovers.
Yeah.
You're trying to close that gap, because I know there's people. I had a teacher in my seminary. He didn't recommend books or stuff or authors because he thought that there's some knowledge just for the academy, not for the people.
Yeah, no, yeah.
Yes,
right.
We are 21st century internet era.
Yes.
Everything is out there.
Right.
We need people like you to guide us through all of that ocean of information and trying to make sense.
The most helpful thing I can think of to guide us is to understand always that theology is working with models.
Right.
Here's an example.
I like that idea.
Here's an
I
example.
love it.
If you ask a physicist, and we have several in our congregation, and I watch them listen to me, and sometimes I wonder what they might be thinking, because I'm decidedly a soft science. I'm a humanities person, right? So it's the psychologies and the sociologies and the anthropologies. These are my sciences. But I watch our physicists out there. and and somehow we collect amongst our community a bizarre level of academics who find what we're doing to be helpful in the sense that they live in that gap.
Mm-hmm. Right.
But here's an example of how a model helps but doesn't fully encapsulate a theme. Is light wavelength? Is it wave or is it particle? And a physicist would say it depends on the context, and each of those helps explain some things, and each of those falls short in other ways. Is God Father or is God Mother? Is God a warrior? That's a model. I think we need to let
Jehová es mi guerrero.
Ay, Dios mío. Arrasando
Muros, tomar la ciudad.
Oh yeah, let's get all far. Man, we teach our little wee tots to be soldiers of. You listen. Here's where we're going over the summer.
There's so too much violence in the world to still talking about God as a warrior.
I think that we can be over once and for all looking at God as a warrior who is going to murder our enemies. Go back to the words of Jesus, and you recover for me any workable category of enemy, and I'll change my theology. But you can't, right? So here's the thing. So here's what we're going to go over the summer. All right, let's wrap this up. Do we have any comments worth engaging?
Well, just people saying hi. Dana talking about how great she is making lasagna, grilled chicken supreme.
What?
I don't know. It was from the beginning. Charlie Menchaca, hey, my brothers, and I have someone from Guatemala. Greetings from Guatemala.
Guatemala. Wow,
yes.
Fantastic.
Guatemala.
So here's where we're going, and I never ended up anywhere worth going that I didn't get there by accident. That's just me. I don't travel with itineraries. I don't sit down early in January and plan where we're going for the year theologically over the preaching schedule. It just falls, and I take the next step in front. But here's where we're going to go now. We're going to begin a series this coming Sunday that we're going to entitle, Wait, What? Bible Stories for Grown-Ups. And we're going to, I've been waiting for years to do this because I finally feel like we have enough of the stepping stones in the stream for us to do this without just messing people up and angering people and screwing things up. We're going to take a journey back through 6 or 7 weeks of the great seminal Old Testament stories that have shaped our psyche, our collective psyche, our cosmology, you might say, that have shaped us as Christians. We're going to go back and look at the things that, frankly, I've been a little embarrassed to mention because I want to be a person of science in the 21st century. I don't know how every living animal in the world ends up on a wooden ship. Well, mostly because that's preposterous, right? And so we're going to go back into the Garden of Eden and Noah's Ark, and we're going to deal with. Do you have the list of you have a list somewhere of the sermons?
Yeah, Babel and Cain.
We're going to do
Abel.
Jonah and the fish, and we're going to go back into these stories. Now that we can say these were models at the time that moved a budding awareness of God forward, we can hold them without needing to say this is exactly an eyewitness account of creation or else you have no faith. In fact, it takes far more faith to say that's exactly what happened, as observed by someone who wasn't even there, who doesn't even claim to be. So the summer is ahead, and we'll create some sparks and step in a couple of cow pies now and again, this year being Texas, of course, but it'll be an honest, authentic attempt to pay homage to the roots of our faith, which aren't Christian. Our faith is Jewish in its roots.
Yeah.
I want to give back to Jewish cosmology the gift of articulating itself. I'm not content with 21st or 20th century white male evangelical Christians in America telling me how Jews thought. I think we need to let those stories rise and fall on the parameters applied to them by the people who they worked for originally. And so we're going to have a fun journey. It'll be interesting. It'll probably be crazy, and it'll be exciting. And I'm looking forward to it, actually.
Yeah.
How about you? Anything we need to answer?
Yeah.
What we got
This
here?
is very
Can you read it? 'Cause
interesting.
I can't even see it.
Esmeralda Morales from Guatemala. She said, people in the pews are the ones that tithe and pay the salary of the pastor. That's why the pastors keep preaching whatever keeps the congregants at ease.
Oh my God.
Oh.
Yeah, there is. Let's be honest. I know many pastors who don't speak honestly and authentically because of that fear.
That's right.
For whatever reason, I get up every day and enjoy a life in which I don't feel that police presence. And it's not a great issue of character. If you put me between this and providing for my children, my magnificent children, Boy, I don't want to be in that situation either. But I think
You
it's
know,
time
in my
to
life, I
speak
never
truth.
teach something different just because of money. But eventually, I just keep silent. As,
Yeah,
a, way,
which
as,
is-
a way, as a way to
which is
preserve
complicity.
family.
Which is complicity, but you've had to.
Yeah.
I know your story. I know where you've been.
Yeah.
I was in not that place, but I was in a place that required some silence too. And I think
You know, there's a friend of mine that he told me, there's a season to be a priest, and there's a season to be a prophet.
Yeah.
And I love to say that ANC is the place to be a prophet, and I love it. I like it. I love it.
Well, it's exciting to me. It's exhilarating. I do not find any joy in just crushing old models for the sake of
Yeah.
being
Yeah.
persnickety or for being precocious. There's nothing in that for me. I do, however, want to be able to intellectually hold the center of an ancient faith in full awareness that there are things we understand now. And we will, our experience and knowledge will break down at its own natural level, and we will need those to push beyond. But I don't see us as trying to re-achieve a perfection we once had. We are on our way to a full becoming. The whole cosmos is. Darwin said it, and everyone lost their minds and lit things on fire. But I think the reality is we are becoming. And as we become, new models will become necessary for us to account for all the things our bodies know to be true about the divine. Primarily, that nature is in us. I mean, I know we keep tickling that bear and it keeps not waking up. No one's blowing the whistle on us, but the reality is, any model that moves us in the direction of more fully accounting for the material nature of God and the divine nature of material, I'll take anything we can take to move us in that direction, because I think that's the trajectory of this. We're not going from perfection. We lost it because we sinned and we're trying to re-achieve it. No. We are just look at the cosmos, look at the fossil record, look at the hard sciences. We're moving in a direction of greater awareness, and I think that is, in one way or the other, that is the gospel. So there we go. Wheels off, wind's blowing, hat's still on though. See that?
I see.
Right.
So on the left